In the living room, where golden strands of spring sunlight filtered through the windows, Nora Davist was in the midst of getting everything ready for her daughter Davis's birthday celebration. As she smoothed out a floral-patterned tablecloth across the table, she caught a glimpse of the clock. Only 2 hours remained before Davis's friends would start to arrive. It had been 3 years since Nora's divorce, and only now did she feel like she was finding her footing as a single mom. Between long shifts as a pharmacist at the local drugstore and the never-ending list of home responsibilities, Nora often found herself stretched thin. Her relationship with 15-year-old Davis had become increasingly layered, more challenging at times, yet deeply meaningful. Davis, bright and fiercely independent, had inherited much of her mother's willful spirit, along with a streak of stubbornness that sometimes led to sparks. But those shared traits, rather than driving them apart, had actually brought them closer in an unspoken way. "Mom, where do you want these?" Davis stepped into the living room, her arms full of colorful balloons. Her hair was pulled back into a simple ponytail, and she wore casual jeans and a plain tee, a blend of teenager and young woman in her appearance and demeanor. "Could you place them around the table?" Nora replied with a warm smile. Then she added, a bit hesitantly, "Have you heard from your dad?" Davis's expression dimmed slightly, and she gave a small shake of her head. "Not yet. But he said he'd come." Ethan, Nora's ex-husband, ran a growing IT company just outside town. Though their post-divorce interactions remained polite on the surface, his presence in Davis's life had dwindled as his work consumed more and more of his time. "What about Grandma Margot?" Nora asked gently, trying not to sound too probing. "She called earlier," Davis replied, her tone tinged with subtle tension. "Said she's bringing something special." Margot, Ethan's mother, had a polished reputation as one of the top real estate agents in town and a familiar face at charity events. Though the divorce hadn't dulled her interest in Davis, in fact, her involvement had only deepened. Her attention often came in the form of high-end gifts, designer outfits, the latest tech, and things Nora could never afford. "I'm guessing she's bringing something extravagant again," Nora said with a light chuckle, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Beneath the humor lay a tangle of mixed feelings. Margot's generosity always seemed to come with invisible strings. By 4 p.m., the party was in full swing. Cue the inevitable appearance of a YouTube ad in the narrative. Those pop up like uninvited guests at every gathering. Davis's friends trickled in one by one, filling the house with chatter, laughter, and the buzzing energy of teenage celebration. Right on schedule, Ethan arrived too. Still as polished as ever, he wore a sharp suit and carried himself with the same composed charm he always had. "Happy birthday, Davis," he said, giving his daughter a quick kiss on the cheek and handing her a small, wrapped box. "I can't stay long, work stuff, but I wanted to see you." Davis gave him a polite smile as she accepted the box. Inside was a sleek, stylish wristwatch. "That's beautiful," Nora commented, glancing at Davis. "Thank your dad." "Thanks, Dad," Davis said softly, her voice calm but distant. There was a noticeable gap between them, something unsaid that hung in the air. As the celebration picked up again, the doorbell rang. Nora answered it to find Margot Davist standing on the doorstep, perfectly styled as always in an elegant designer ensemble, holding a large, glossy gift box. "Sorry I'm late, Nora," Margot said sweetly, though her tone carried its usual trace of frost. "Today's a special day, after all." Stepping into the house with practiced grace, Margot made a beeline for Davis. "Happy birthday, my darling girl," she exclaimed, embracing her granddaughter and handing over the gift. "I picked this out just for you." Davis opened the box slowly, her expression taut. Inside was the latest iPhone model, so new it hadn't even appeared in local stores yet. A collective gasp rippled through the room. "Wow. That's the newest one," one of her friends squealed. "I'm so jealous." "Thank you," Davis said, but her voice lacked the usual sparkle. Her eyes flicked to Nora, betraying an emotion that didn't quite match the smile on her face. Nora tilted her head slightly, puzzled. Normally, Davis would have at least feigned excitement for a gift like that, but today something was clearly off. Her daughter looked uncomfortable. Go ahead, try it out, Margot prompted with a proud smile. I already set it up for you, it's ready to go. Later, Davis replied shortly, setting the box aside. Once the party had wound down and the last of the guests had said their goodbyes, Davis slipped into her room and quietly placed the unopened iPhone into her desk drawer. Nora, watching from the hallway, knocked gently on the door before stepping inside. Davis, she said softly, that was a really generous gift from your grandmother. Why aren't you using it? Davis hesitated, then replied in a low voice, I just don't want to. Nora crouched down next to her. Is there a reason? Davis gave a small shrug. Not really. Troubled by her daughter's reaction, Nora later picked up the phone and called Ethan. Davis doesn't seem happy about Margot's present, she told him. Any idea why? Ethan's response came with predictable dismissiveness. Teenage girls are moody. I wouldn't read too much into it. After they hung up, Nora wandered back into the living room and gazed out through the window. The street outside was calm, bathed in the glow of the street lights. But something inside her stirred with unease. This didn't feel like typical teenage behavior. Davis's change wasn't just a mood swing, it felt like something deeper, something quietly brewing just below the surface. And then came the next morning. Nora stood in the kitchen, waiting for Davis to come down while preparing a simple breakfast. These quiet morning moments had become something she treasured, those few minutes before school where real conversations sometimes happened. As Davis finally descended the stairs, Nora poured orange juice and slid a bowl of cereal across the counter. Good morning, she said with a gentle smile. Did you sleep okay? Davis gave a small nod and silently began eating, her mood noticeably more withdrawn than usual. Trying to keep things light, Nora asked, what about your birthday present? The new iPhone? Aren't you going to start using it? Davis froze, her spoon halfway to her mouth. She looked up, meeting her mother's gaze with an intensity that made Nora's chest tighten. I told you I don't want to use it, Davis said flatly. But your grandmother picked it out just for you. Is there a reason? Nora pressed gently. There was a long pause. Davis's eyes darkened slightly before she murmured something that sent a chill down Nora's spine. You'll understand if you try using it. Nora blinked, confused. What does that mean? Nothing, Davis said quickly, shoving another spoonful of cereal into her mouth. I'm going to be late. I need to leave soon. Over the next few days, Nora noticed Davis growing even more distant. After school, she would head straight to her room, often closing the door and staying there for hours. She stopped hanging out with her usual group of friends, and when Nora called her for dinner or tried to chat, the answers were short, sometimes barely more than a nod. That weekend, Nora met up with her old college friend Riley at a quiet cafe, hoping for some perspective. Riley, now working in the tech industry, had always been someone Nora trusted to think critically and not overreact. So, Davis has been acting off lately, Nora said, stirring her coffee. And she refuses to use the iPhone Margot gave her for her birthday. She told me I'd understand if I tried using it. I'm at a loss. Riley set down her mug and leaned forward. Your ex-mother-in-law, Margot, she's in real estate, right? Nora nodded slowly. Yeah. She runs the top agency in town. Why? And your ex-husband owns that IT company on the edge of town? Yes, what are you getting at? Nora asked, her voice wary. There's been a rise in surveillance-related tech misuse lately, Riley said cautiously. Especially with smartphones. It's not unheard of for people to use them to monitor others without their knowledge. Nora's brows furrowed. Are you saying, surveillance? You don't think Margot would actually? I'm not saying she would, Riley replied carefully, but if I were you, I'd take a look at that phone. Just in case. Maybe it's nothing. But maybe it's not. After the cafe, Nora's thoughts swirled with unease. The idea seemed far-fetched at first, Margot using Ethan's tech to spy on Davis? But as she drove home, a string of unsettling memories played through her mind. Margot always just happened to show up at Davis's school plays and award ceremonies, even ones Nora barely remembered mentioning. She'd bumped into them during vacations, in different towns, at the oddest times. And just recently, she'd commented on the exact arrangement of Davis's room and her favorite fashion choices, details Nora didn't recall sharing, and certainly nothing Davis would have told her voluntarily. When she pulled into the driveway, she spotted Davis's friend Lila standing on the front step. "Hi, Lila," Nora said, a bit surprised. "Davis is not home. She said she was going to the library after school." "Actually, I came to talk to you, Mrs. Davis," Lila replied, shifting awkwardly. Nora's concern deepened. "Is something wrong?" Lila hesitated, then finally said, "It's about Davis. There's a weird rumor going around school." Nora's stomach tightened. "What kind of rumor?" "Some kids are saying that there are photos of Davis online." "Personal photos? Like, from her room?" Lila looked uncomfortable. An upperclassman, Lila, was bragging he saw pictures of Davis, changing. Nora's face went pale. "What? Who would take something like that?" "I don't know," Lila said quickly, her voice trembling. "But some kids say there's a site where people can pay to see stuff like that." I didn't want to believe it, but when I heard Davis's name, Nora could barely breathe as Lila left. She dropped onto the sofa, her mind spinning in a haze of disbelief and fear. Is this what's been haunting Davis? Had she somehow found out her privacy was being violated? Desperate for answers, Nora opened her laptop and searched for news about Ethan's company. The business had apparently boomed over the last 6 months, launching a new cloud-based service. The article was vague, but it hinted at innovative data syncing and device monitoring capabilities. Nora's decision came quickly. Before Davis came home, she would check her room. As much as it pained her to cross that boundary, the thought of her daughter being watched, exploited, made hesitation impossible. Upstairs, Nora stepped into Davis's room and immediately spotted her old iPhone sitting quietly on the desk, the one she'd used before her birthday. Not the new one. Curious and concerned, Nora checked drawers and shelves, but there was no sign of the new device. Just then, the doorbell rang. Nora rushed downstairs and opened it to find Margot Davis standing on the porch, poised and polished as ever. "Nora, I hope it's okay I stopped by," Margot said with a sugary tone, barely waiting for an invitation before stepping inside. "Is Davis home?" "She's not back yet," Nora replied calmly, doing her best to keep her voice even. "Was there something you needed?" Margot's eyes moved over the living room with practiced ease. "I was just wondering if Davis is using the iPhone I gave her. It was quite an expensive gift, and I hoped she liked it." "She hasn't started using it yet," Nora said, choosing her words carefully. "She might just need some time." "I see," Margot's tone cooled slightly. "I wonder where she's keeping it. Perhaps, in her room?" Nora felt her muscles tense. "I'm not sure." "Why do you ask?" "Oh, no reason," Margot said quickly, flashing a disarming smile. "Just curious. By the way, those blue curtains in Davis's room, they're lovely. They suit her so well." Nora stared at her, the color draining from her face. "How would she know that?" "I've been looking for a similar shade myself," Margot said lightly, her eyes scanning Nora's expression. Nora froze. She was absolutely certain she'd never mentioned the color of Davis's curtains to Margot. And Davis had never invited her grandmother into her room, not even once. The detail felt too specific to be innocent. "I should get going," Margot said abruptly, already turning toward the door. "If you see Davis, please remind her to give me a call." From the window, Nora watched Margot step into her sleek car. But just as Margot was pulling away, another vehicle rolled up and parked at the curb. Nora's breath caught in her throat. It was Ethan. She stood motionless, peering between the curtains as Ethan approached Margot's car and leaned down to speak to her through the driver's side window. Their faces were serious, locked in what looked like a tense, quiet argument. No smiles, no polite nods. Just intensity. Nora backed away from the window and leaned against the wall, her heart hammering against her ribs. Her hands had gone cold. Something was very wrong. And she was starting to feel like she was the last to realize it. That evening, Davis was sleeping over at Lila's house. After dinner, Nora drove her there, her fingers drumming nervously on the steering wheel at every red light. "I'll pick you up in the morning," she said through the car window once they arrived. "And if anything weird happens, anything at all, you call me, okay?" Davis hesitated, like something was caught in her throat. "Mom," she began, then clamped her mouth shut. "Never mind. See you tomorrow." Nora watched her daughter walk up the steps and disappear inside, wondering what words Davis had almost said, and why she hadn't said them. But tonight wasn't the time to wonder. Tonight, Nora had something else she needed to do. Back at the house, now eerily silent, Nora climbed the stairs with slow determination. She headed straight for Davis's room. She had to find that phone, the one Margot had given Davis for her birthday and that Davis had refused to use. She searched everywhere. The desk drawers, the closet, behind the bookshelf, even inside pillowcases. Nothing. Where the hell did she hide it? Nora muttered to herself, standing in the middle of the room. Then she saw it. Barely sticking out from under the bed, a shoebox, just slightly off-center. Heart pounding, Nora crouched down and pulled it out. Inside, wrapped in a sheet of plain tissue paper, was the missing iPhone. Her hands trembled as she unwrapped it. The device powered on immediately, no passcode screen. It went straight to the home screen, just as Margot had said it would. Nora blinked. That alone was strange. Davis was careful about her digital privacy. A phone with no lock? No way. That wasn't her. As Nora stared at the screen, something about it felt off. The layout looked normal at first glance, basic app icons arranged in rows, but the selection felt oddly generic. Most of Davis's usual Gota apps weren't there. Swiping to the last page, Nora noticed a folder titled Utilities. She tapped it open. Calculator Plus. Weather Pro. Family Monitor. Family Monitor? A tight knot formed in her chest. Dread slithered down her spine. She tapped the app. The screen went black, a circular loading icon spinning in the center. And then, it opened. Nora stared in horror as live video feeds of Davis's bedroom filled the screen. Multiple angles. Clear as day. No grain, no lag. "No," she whispered. Her hand hovered, shaking, as she tapped one of the screen's icons labeled Archive. A timeline of dates appeared. She selected the most recent. Footage played, Davis doing homework, chatting on the phone, and then, to Nora's horror, changing clothes. The camera feed didn't cut away. It captured everything. "No, no, no, no," Nora said aloud, her voice cracking. The app wasn't just a surveillance system, it was a full-scale invasion. She tapped another menu labeled Distribution Settings. A new screen opened, showing a registration panel. Fields for username, subscription level, and streaming preferences. Streaming. Nora's stomach turned. Was this being broadcast? She pressed deeper. Another option appeared, premium content. And just like that, thumbnails lined the screen, sample images of Davis's most private moments, captured without her knowledge. A glowing message above them read, "Subscribe now to access exclusive content." Nora gagged, barely keeping herself from vomiting. She locked her eyes on the URL printed at the bottom of the page, burning it into memory. Then she dropped the iPhone on the bed, rushed to grab her own laptop, and typed the address into her browser. The site loaded instantly. Clean, polished design. Sleek branding. The tagline made her blood run cold, "Private Livery, a safe place to share special moments." To an outsider, it might look like any ordinary subscription service. But one look at the registration fields, the interface, the pricing tiers, and it became clear what this really was, a high-end, deeply illegal spying platform. Nora clenched her fists, trying to stop them from trembling. She wasn't tech-savvy, but Riley had taught her some tricks. She used a basic domain lookup tool, checked the page's source code, and opened the browser's developer tools. Her pulse nearly stopped when she checked the contact email tied to the site's domain. It was Margot's business address. And the kicker? The server logs showed that the entire platform was hosted using infrastructure from Ethan's IT company. Nora rose from her chair, unable to sit still any longer. She began pacing the living room floor, each step echoing her growing rage. Her mind spun in furious circles. Margot and Ethan, two people who claimed to care for Davis, had orchestrated an elaborate, sickening betrayal. The image they'd projected for years as concerned, loving family members? It had all been a lie. Fueled by a surge of both fear and fury, Nora snatched her phone from the counter beside the fridge and dialed with trembling fingers. Sunnyvale Police Department. Is this an emergency? Yes, Nora said, her voice tight but unshakable. My daughter's a victim of a serious crime. She's been secretly monitored. Her privacy's been violated, and I have proof. After providing her name and address, Nora ended the call and sprang into action. She snapped photos of the incriminating iPhone, captured screenshots of the disturbing website, and backed up what evidence she could. Then, grabbing her coat and keys, she made a split-second decision. She wasn't going to just sit and wait for help. She needed to move. She had to look law enforcement in the eye, hand them the evidence, and make sure they understood the urgency. As she slid into the driver's seat and started the engine, Nora's thoughts locked into place like steel. She would tear down the toxic illusion Margot and Ethan had constructed. They would be exposed for what they really were. More than that, she would never allow her daughter to be placed in danger again. Not by anyone. Taking a deep breath, she pulled onto the dark road, headlights cutting through the night as she headed toward the police station. The building was well lit despite the late hour, its brightness offering a strange sense of hope. Clutching the iPhone and her laptop, Nora rushed through the doors and explained everything to the officer at the front desk. Within minutes, Detective Samuel Blake was called in. Calm but alert, he guided her to a private room where she poured everything out: Davis's sudden changes in behavior, the strange birthday gift, and the sickening footage she'd found hidden within. Samuel took notes quickly, occasionally pausing to ask questions. "This is the iPhone," he asked when she held it out. Nora nodded. "And here are the screenshots from the website." After reviewing the evidence, Samuel's expression hardened. "I'll need to bring in someone from cybercrimes." He left and soon returned with a woman in her late 20s, sharp-eyed, focused, already pulling on gloves. "This is Detective Erin," Samuel said. "She specializes in digital surveillance and exploitation cases." Erin began examining the iPhone and screenshots with professional intensity. After a few moments, she looked up, her voice steady but grim. "This is serious," she said. "Completely illegal. We're talking about covert surveillance of a minor and the digital distribution of that footage." Nora's throat tightened. "You mentioned your ex-husband and mother-in-law?" Erin asked. "Yes," Nora said quietly. "Margot's listed as the site's contact. And Ethan's company is hosting the site." Samuel gave a firm nod. "We'll preserve everything and launch a formal investigation immediately. In the meantime, is there somewhere safe your daughter can stay?" "She can go to my sister's," Nora said, though her voice trembled. "But, what should I tell her? Does she already know?" "Or, we'll need to speak with Davis," Samuel replied gently. "But we'll do it carefully. The goal is to protect her emotionally as well as legally." The next morning, Nora pulled up outside Lila's house to pick up her daughter. In the car, she struggled to find the right words, then finally spoke. "Davis. I went to the police." Davis's eyes widened. "You found it, didn't you?" "The phone from Grandma Margot." Nora nodded. "Everything that was on it." Davis turned her face toward the window, silent for a moment. "Did you know?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Lila told me," Nora admitted. And when I checked the iPhone, Davis, you knew, didn't you? Davis covered her face with her hands, and her voice cracked as the words came out. Lila. Lila's brother, he's good with computers. He overheard some seniors at school talking about photos from my room. So Lila checked it out for me. That's how I found out. I was too ashamed to tell you. Nora pulled the car to the shoulder and wrapped her arms around her daughter. Davis, listen to me. This is not your fault. Not even a little bit. Your grandmother and father are the ones who've done something horrible. They're the criminals here, not you. Davis broke down in her arms, sobbing. Lila said the iPhone had spy apps on it, she said through tears. So I never used it. But we couldn't figure out where the cameras were. Nora gently stroked her hair. It's okay now. The police are going to handle everything. For now, we're going to your aunt's. Somewhere safe. That afternoon, after Davis had left for her aunt's, Detective Samuel returned to Nora's house, this time with a full cybercrime team. They began a meticulous search of Davis's room, scanning every object with forensic precision. What they found chilled Nora to the bone. Tiny, almost invisible cameras had been embedded in the most unsuspecting places: a wall clock, a bookshelf decoration, even the decorative molding along the ceiling. This is a sophisticated setup, Samuel muttered as they bagged the evidence. Definitely not amateur. Erin arrived a few minutes later with fresh findings from her analysis. It's bigger than we thought, she told Nora. According to our preliminary review, this website wasn't just streaming Davis. There are at least 5 other families listed in the archive. Nora felt her knees go weak. 5? All appear to be families Margot Davist had some kind of access to, likely through her real estate business, Erin explained. She probably used her position to get spare keys or entry under the guise of renovations or consultations. Nora's hands curled into fists. You are going to arrest them, right? Her voice shook, not with fear, but with fury. We have more than enough evidence, Detective Samuel said, folding his hands on the table as he looked Nora in the eye. But we have to move carefully. If they catch wind of the investigation too early, they might try to cover their tracks, or disappear. Nora nodded, her expression firm. I'll do whatever you need. Just tell me. Samuel leaned forward. We're planning to draw them both out, Margot and Ethan. We'll make sure they're caught at the same time. But we'll need your help. The plan was mapped out with precision. That evening, Nora called Margot. Her voice was calm but deliberately uneasy. Something's happened with Davis, she said. Something serious. I need to talk to you and Ethan. In person. Margot hesitated, suspicious, clearly, but when Nora mentioned Davis acting strangely and hinted at trouble at school, she agreed to come right away. The house was quiet when the hour arrived. Too quiet. In the living room, the iPhone and Nora's laptop sat conspicuously on the table. Police officers were stationed in nearby rooms, others waiting outside. Every camera, every mic was set to record. 10 minutes early, Margot's luxury car rolled up outside. Moments later, Ethan pulled in behind her. The two walked toward the house together, wearing concerned expressions that didn't quite reach their eyes. When the doorbell rang, Nora inhaled slowly and opened the door. Nora, what's going on? Margot asked, her face a picture of faux concern. Is Davis okay? Come in, Nora said, voice steady. We need to talk. They stepped into the living room. The moment their eyes landed on the iPhone and laptop on the table, their faces shifted, no longer concerned, but alert. Hard. Guarded. I know, Nora said, standing tall. Everything. Margot gave a dry, elegant laugh. I don't know what you think you've found, but we've only ever been concerned for Davis. Nora held her ground. This iPhone had surveillance apps installed. You planted cameras in Davis's room. And the footage was sold online. Ethan scoffed. Nora, come on. That's insane. I have proof, she replied coldly. The site is called Private Livery. It's hosted on your company's servers, Ethan. Margot, your business email is listed as the administrator. A heavy silence fell. The masks were cracking. Margot's voice changed, her tone dropping to something darker. Nora, you may think you understand. But we didn't do anything wrong. It's just business. Business? Nora's voice shook with fury. You exploited a child, your own granddaughter, and called it business? Ethan stood, the air suddenly electric with tension. Hand over the evidence. No one else needs to know. If you stay quiet, Davis stays safe. Nora rose to her feet, voice unwavering. Is that a threat? It's too late, she continued. The police know everything. Margot's expression twisted in fury. You have no idea the influence we hold in this town. Davis is special. We were sharing her with the world. It's art. You disgust me, Nora spat. You betrayed her. And I'll never let you near her again. Ethan lunged toward Nora, his eyes wild with fear. Give me the evidence. That was the moment the door swung open. Detective Samuel entered with 2 uniformed officers. Don't move, he ordered. Margot shrieked. Ethan tried to bolt, but the officers were on him in seconds. They were handcuffed and marched out to the waiting patrol cars. Left alone, Nora collapsed onto the sofa, shaking from adrenaline and disbelief. For years, she'd forced herself to accept the charade of Margot and Ethan's concern, all to maintain a fragile peace. But that illusion had been shattered tonight. The truth was ugly, but it was out. Samuel returned a few minutes later. You did something brave, he told her. This will protect more families than you know. Nora gave a tired smile. I'd do anything to keep Davis safe. There'll be more we need to ask, Samuel added gently. And we'll need to speak to Davis too, but we'll take it slow. Right now, you should get some rest. Nora nodded. It wasn't over yet, but for the first time in days, she could breathe. Davis was somewhere safe. And the fear that had loomed over them like a shadow had finally begun to lift. 1 year later. The courthouse doors opened with a satisfying clunk behind them. It's over, Davis whispered as she and Nora stepped into the sunlight. She looked older now, not just taller, but steadier. Stronger. Nora wrapped her arm around her daughter's shoulders. It is. Margot had been sentenced to 20 years. Ethan, 15. By the time they were released, if they ever were, Davis would be a grown woman. During the trial, every dirty secret had come to light. Private Livery hadn't just targeted Davis. At least 8 families had been monitored, minors filmed and streamed for profit. Margot had used her real estate business to access homes, often under the pretense of offering tech upgrades or renovations. The devices? All cleverly modified gifts, powered by Ethan's innovations. Margot, until the very end, had clung to her delusion, calling her crimes artistic expression. Ethan tried to distance himself, claiming Margot had manipulated him. But the evidence said otherwise. As they got into the car, Nora turned to Davis. Detective Samuel reached out, she said. There's a meeting next week. A support group for the other families. Davis nodded. Over the past few months, she and Nora had been slowly rebuilding, through counseling, through time, through simply learning how to feel safe again. Are you going to go? Davis asked. Of course, Nora said. We both will. Your story could help other kids. They'd moved to a new home, one without ghosts. It sat on a quiet hill that overlooked the sea. Birds woke them in the morning. The salt air was gentle, healing. Davis had joined her school's cybersecurity club. She'd started speaking out about privacy, awareness, online safety, using her own story as a warning, a shield for others. Mom, Davis said softly, as they turned into the drive. That night, when I told you you'd understand if you tried using the phone, I was so scared. But you didn't stop. You believed me. You kept going. Nora stopped the car, turning to face her. Protecting you is my job, she said. Always will be. Davis smiled. Real family, it's not about blood. It's about this. Trusting each other. Standing up for each other. Nora's eyes glistened. That's exactly right. That evening, they sat side by side on the back deck, watching the sun dip below the waves. The sky was a soft blaze of orange. The sea whispered in the distance. The world wasn't perfect. But it was healing. A new beginning, Nora said, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Davis nodded and reached for her mother's hand. Their story had begun in silence and fear. But it had become something else entirely, a story of truth, resilience, and the fierce, unstoppable love between a mother and her daughter.